she gets up to watch the morning news. Doesn't work no more, but tells a lot of stories about her youth. Drinks more lately and got pills in many different colors too. Morning light is showing, she moves the chair to look out at her view. But her shop was built right across the street, and it stands where the sunrise used to be. In the afternoons on the couch to read, goes through old pictures and memories. Our heroes have been forgotten, our heroes so brave and bold. Our heroes have been forgotten, our heroes so they got old. Our heroes have been forgotten, our heroes so brave and bold. Our heroes have been forgotten, our heroes so they got old. Our heroes so they got old. Our heroes so they got old. Smiles they fade because her daughter only visits once a month. Since she got a family of her own, it's kept the two apart. Used to have so many visitors, but now the only one is the nurse that helps her move the chair to look out at the sun. But her shop was built right across the street, and it stands where the sunrise used to be. In the afternoons on the couch to read, goes through old pictures and memories. Our heroes have been forgotten, our heroes so brave and bold. Our heroes have been forgotten, our heroes so they got old. Our heroes have been forgotten, our heroes so brave and bold. Our heroes have been forgotten, our heroes so they got old.
This conference would not have been a reality without the collaborative efforts of all our partner entities and the different men and women behind these organizations. So,
salamat sa lahat ng mga sumuporta sa ating pong IEPEC or International Ethics Peace Education Conference 2022. Kasi kung wala po sa inyong suporta o sa lahat ng mga sumuporta nito, katulad ng AUSN, ng SES Mindanao, ng HWPL per se, at ng Ordinata City University, hindi maging successful ito. Kaya kung anong nararamdaman ko ngayon, syempre galak, tuwa, at kapayapaan sa aking sarili at sana kapayapaan din para sa lahat ang naidulot itong selebrasyon. Sabi yun na kailangan natin ipagpatuloy ito. Kasi marami tayong ginagawang conferences, na atin ang conferences, pero minsan natatapos lang yung sa conference lang. Pagkatapos, pagka-uwi natin sa bahay, ang katanungan doon, ano na ang application ating, or ano na na-apply natin sa nating conference. So sa akin, ang challenge na ito is talaga very challenging siya kasi nasa nabanggit ko kanina, from idea to actual, or the content to the reality. Kasi pag uwi natin sa bahay, kailangan natin isabuhay na ito. Paano? Siyempre yung mga papers na pinag-set natin, yung ating mga plenary na narinig natin, pwede natin apply ito. Paano natin i-apply? Sa ating pamilya, sa ating komunidad, sa ating mga kapitbahay. So kung ma-apply natin ito, then that will be the concrete realization of this program. Kasi magiging walang kwenta ang event na ito, pag uwi sa bahay, magbabalik pa rin tayo doon sa nakaisnan na parang wala tayong narinig sa conference na. And sa nabanggit ko kanina, maraming salamat sa ating partner ng The Education Channel, ng partner na HWPL. Kasi kung wala sa inyo ang event na ito, ay masasabi ko talaga hindi successful. Kasi yung promotion ng peace ay hindi gawa ng isang tao. Hindi lang ng organizer. Hindi lang po ng mga participants. Lahat po tayo ay katulong dito at ang HWPL po ay talagang malaki ang tulong na naibigay ng ambag sa promotion ng conference na ito. Kasi kung ang PEC lamang ang magkakandak ng seminar na ito, conference na ito, without sa HWPN, parang hindi mararamdaman ng ating mga audience. Ano bang advocacy ninyo? Kasi ang Education Channel is a platform, digital platform. So ano ba yung inyong programa na masasabi natin na naka-anchored sa kapayapaan? So masasabi ko, with the partnership sa HWPN, doon naging magtagumpay, naging maayos, at naging mayroong pakinabang ang ating conference because HWPN help us a lot, no? Sa ang Education Channel para sa conference na to kasi we are promoting not only ethics but also peace, and that peace will become our culture, and that's why in my advocacy I'm promoting.
So let's now proceed to the presentation of papers. May I call on Mr. Jonathan James Cañete to moderate the paper presentation this afternoon. Sir Cañete, please.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, dear participants, our well-esteemed paper presenters. I am Mr. Jonathan James Cañete, a college instructor at the Ateneo de Manila University. I'll be your moderator for this afternoon's session. So we're fortunate to have 8 paper presentations for this afternoon's session. But before jumping into the first presentation, allow me to lay down some reminders. First and foremost, each paper presenters will only be given 20 minutes to present their work. And after which, the floor will be open for the open forum for questions, queries, and the raising of ideas coming from our participants. So meaning to say, we will finish all the presentations before we entertain different questions. Now, for the participants, in asking your questions, do not forget to state the name of the paper presenter to whom your question is being addressed. So without further ado, let us have the first paper presentation. Our first paper presenter is a faculty of medicine at Benghazi University. He took his Master of Science at Madras Medical College, India in 1971, and his PhD in the same university in 1977. So this paper entitled Education, Peace, and Gandhian Perspective will give us an idea on the concept of education and peace based from the idea of Gandhi. So, dear participants, now let us welcome in our midst Dr. Dhastagir Sultan Sharif.
So let's now proceed to the presentation of papers. May I call on Mr. Jonathan James Cañete to moderate the paper presentation this afternoon. Sir Cañete, please.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, dear participants, our well-esteemed paper presenters. I am Mr. Jonathan James Cañete, a college instructor at the Ateneo de Manila University. I'll be your moderator for this afternoon's session. So we're fortunate to have 8 paper presentations for this afternoon's session. But before jumping into the first presentation, allow me to lay down some reminders. First and foremost, each paper presenters will only be given 20 minutes to present their work. And after which, the floor will be open for the open forum for questions, queries, and the raising of ideas coming from our participants. So meaning to say, we will finish all the presentations before we entertain different questions. Now, for the participants, in asking your questions, do not forget to state the name of the paper presenter to whom your question is being addressed. So without further ado, let us have the first paper presentation. Our first paper presenter is a faculty of medicine at Benghazi University. He took his Master of Science at Madras Medical College, India in 1971, and his PhD in the same university in 1977. So this paper entitled Education, Peace, and Gandhian Perspective will give us an idea on the concept of education and peace based from the idea of Gandhi. So, dear participants, now let us welcome in our midst Dr. Dhastagir Sultan Sharif.
So, education and peace, a Gandhian perspective. By education, I mean all around drawing out of best in child and man, body, mind, and spirit. Literacy is not the end of education or even the beginning. This was this Gandhian writing in Harijan in July 31, 1937. It is just a picture of Mahatma Gandhi, one of the greatest souls that India had produced for the world to cherish. My next slide will try to give you an explanation. Education helps to bring the best out of an individual. Education teaches one the value of life and to attain a balance of mind, to be at peace with oneself and therefore the society. The process of education builds character, physical strength, and a mental resolve to learn as living and life. Only a good individual becomes a good citizen. Education must provide opportunities for the complete development of the individual. Gandhiji, the teacher and the group. In India, the different types of teachers, that is, one who gives information is called as Adhyapak, who imparts knowledge combined with information is called as Ubadhyay, the one who imparts skill is called Acharya, the one who is able to give a deep insight into a subject is called Pandit. So Gandhiji is a guru, all in one. Your teacher gives you information, imparts knowledge, develops skills, makes you to think deep into a subject, makes you have a vision, awakens wisdom. The teacher, therefore, is a guru. For such learning, one needs to develop the clarity of thought and mind, understand the system of education, grow intellectually, and become a humane human. Education for peace and harmony is to change the mindset, to affect a transformation in the worldview towards holistic perception in consonance with the right understanding of reality. The value education is a process of developing human consciousness. Peace is to be inward, wherein you develop a mind that is at peace with oneself. Attaining a peace in such a situation, I think often people look for circumstances to help achieve a sense of inner peace, says Ashley Davis Bush. In fact, this calm, compassionate, deep awareness is actually within each person. It is as if we have a deep reservoir of peacefulness and serenity inside us. What we have to learn to do is to tap into it. Peace is an essential precondition for progress. The spiritual heights cannot be achieved without being peaceful within. External peace emanates from internal peace. All religions, therefore, propagate the value of peace. UNICEF defines peace education as the process of promoting the knowledge, skills, attitudes, and needed to bring about behavior changes that will enable children, youth, and adults to prevent conflict and violence, both overt and structural, to resolve conflict peacefully and to create the conditions conducive to peace, whether at an intrapersonal, interpersonal, intergroup, national, or international level. UNICEF states that every child learns outlining 3 distinct goals: equitable access to learning opportunities, improved learning and skills for all, and improved learning and protection for children in emergencies and fragile contexts. Yet the children do not have access to quality education with poor outcomes. One of the ways in which one can attain inner peace is to develop a mind that remains calm even in turbulent times of emotional trauma or otherwise during routine day-to-day life. The practice of yoga tells you how to attain the peace of mind by practicing breathing exercise with slow breathing in and out. The teacher that imparts such an education is called a yoga teacher. Developing such a personality requires a strong mental resolve and makeup. Gandhiji's concepts of education is known as basic education. He called it as Nai Talim, or literally new education. He laid emphasis on formation of good character, to be an ideal citizen, inculcate democratic ideals, self-reliance, and all-around moral and ethical principles. The main tenets of educational philosophy are free compulsory education to all, craft-centered education, which aims to teaching all subjects by practical application. He believed that brain must be educated by the hand. Educational process must teach the concept of self-support. In other words, the products produced by the learners through the process of learning must generate income to sustain the institution with the support of the government. For broader understanding and expansion of learning, mother tongue will be the medium of instruction, which will promote clarity of thinking and receptivity to new novel ideas. For broader understanding and expression of learning, it is my considered opinion that English education, in the manner it has been given, has emasculated the English-educated Indian. It has put a serve strain upon the Indian students. The process of displacing the vernacular has been one of the saddest chapters in the British connection. A divide has been created between 2 separate groups of Indian society, one with English literacy and the other without it, he observed in India in 27th April. The craft-centered education promotes team spirit, tolerance, and perseverance that will inculcate non-violent behavior and cooperative living. Gandhiji wanted all lessons in history, geography, arithmetic, and related to craft. For broad understanding and expansion of learning, mother tongue will be the medium of instruction, which will promote clarity of thinking and receptivity. Manual labor used in handicraft will promote dignity of labor, and arts and artisans will be respected along with intellectuals. The learning process in Gandhian philosophy is activity-based, which emphasizes more on practical aspects of learning and also imparts active learning methods. The education process needs to create social awareness and be service-oriented. It is based on work-centered education, which can provide the necessary economic self-sufficiency and self-reliance. Gandhi's concept of education is not only the eradication of illiteracy, but learning by doing. He preaches the doctrine of simple living and high thinking. His education system are greatly emphasizing the culture of peace, sincere work, dedication of the cause of the nation, social-minded friendliness, right feelings, economic advancement, physical improvement, and socio-cultural progress. The places you live or the city or the nation need to be peaceful to have a peaceful mind. If you are living in cities where there is conflict or war, like say Lebanon or Ukraine, peace of mind of every individual is lost, and there is a rush to save one's life or expect the unexpected to happen. With dilapidated buildings, debris, and the noise of shooting or bombing and the uprooting homes may definitely require a strong mind and willpower to face such tough situation. Rather, in certain places, civil war and conflicts have made people immune to such hostile environment and learn to develop a strong mind to live and rejuvenate. The environment we live in plays an important role in developing a peaceful mind and therefore obtain a proper education. Why education is the key to global peace and prosperity? 263 million primary and secondary school age children are out of school. 130 million of the same age group can barely read or write. 75 million children of the age group 3 to 18 years live in countries facing war and violence. If we want real peace in the world, we must start educating the children. This Gandhian thought is very relevant today when children involved in violence, clashes, and conflicts for their survival and existence. Gandhiji emphasized on value education as it is necessary for moral development of individual, where peace education is vital for humankind as a whole. Education and peace are two powerful weapons to maintain and attain peace in the world. The world is torn between peace and conflicts. Conflicts have taken their toll in the form of millions of human lives. The war with weapons is taken over by war with digital data. Economic war and political war through social media and platform dictate terms to win or lose an economic or political agenda. In such a digital world, basic education becomes the primary objective of every nation. Every nation has to invest more in primary and secondary education. The concern of poor investment by nations was voiced as, while there are rising problems of poverty, climate change, terrorism, violation of basic human rights, and unemployment, it is appalling to note that government's investment in primary and secondary education has lowered in recent years. Education reduces poverty, improves health, increases gender equality, and boosts economic growth. Education is an investment that pays dividends for many generations. Julia Gillard, the former Australian Prime Minister, who was also the chair of Board of Directors for Global Partnership for Education. Core values of non-violence and social justice are central to peace education. Non-violence is manifested through values such as respect for human rights, freedom, and trust. Social justice is realized by principles of equality, responsibility, and solidarity. There are three main categories of non-violence action: protest and persuasion, including marches and vigils, non-cooperation, and non-violent intervention, such as blockades and occupations. To Tolstoy's principle, non-resistance to evil, along with Jainism's ahimsa, helped Gandhiji to adopt non-violence as a method of resistance. Satya means truth, and agraha means grasp, and the word satyagraha became a non-violent means to fight or protest or disobey or display. Satyagraha is used as a tool for social and political change. In the first state, the satyagrahi adopts persuasion through reason, second stage by suffering, and the third stage is through non-obedience or cooperation to laws or policies instituted by the government. He initiated freedom movement by non-violent method. Satyagraha. Satyagraha is a soul force, pure and simple, and that is the way they understood. It was not the weapon of the weak. Thoreau's policy that every individual has the right to disobey the law and fight for a right cause made Gandhi think that non-violence is a method to fight for one's right by adopting fairer means to achieve an end to a social problem. This is the first Gandhi-led Dandi March for Salt, which had 60,000 people, 248 miles. It took 24 days, and 68 of them were arrested during this protest. Gandhi was a humanist, shall we say, from the first moment of his self-consciousness. He thought of the goodness of the society. Like John Ruskin, he considered man is the most important, be it to bring a peaceful and harmonious society. He says the individual is the one supreme consideration. Man is neither mere intellect, nor the gross animal body, nor the heart or soul alone. A proper and harmonious combination of all the three is required for making of the whole man and constitute the true economic of education. If we want real peace in the world, we must start educating the children. This Gandhian thought is very relevant even today when children are involved, particularly the story of Malala, the Nobel laureate who escaped from the bullets of extremists to propagate the value of girl education. I truly believe the only way we can create global peace is through not only educating our minds, but our souls. Malala. I feel in the innermost recess of my heart that this world is sick to death of blood spilling. The world is seeking a way out, and I flatter myself with the belief to show that way out to the hungering world, Gandhiji. The education that you are receiving now in schools and colleges is only making you a race of dyspeptics. You are working like machines merely and living a jellyfish existence. These words reflect the need for giving double importance to education, particularly primary education, so that you train and create a population for the future to propagate and promote peace in the world. Gandhi's approach was ethical, as he believed that moral regeneration was the root cause of all evils, including conflicts. Hence, he recommended acquisition of moral value by correlating education with craft, social surrounding, and physical environment. I have come to realize that the only way we can tackle misinformation and misunderstandings between and about the three Abrahamic faith is by approaching it at grassroots level. When it rains, water does not gather on the top of the mountain. You find it at the foot of the mountain. It has always been my belief that the real weapon of mass destruction is ignorance. And if ignorance is the problem, then surely education must be the solution. Nazar Khalil. Mahatma Gandhi is indisputably India's gift to the world. The pursuit of peace through the practice of truth, non-violence, compassion, and kindness is his gift to humanity. Through the centrality of education, like non-violence, is almost conclusive. The type of education that is necessary for peace is what has never been addressed in any serious manner. There is need for education, not as the usual intellectual exercise of regurgitation, but a journey through self, of building peace, first with the self, before the society. Thank you very much.
Speaker will present to us their paper entitled Pain and Pleasure as the Final Cause of Action, an analysis on character education. Dear participants, let us welcome in our midst Jimi Paolo B. Valeza from Colegio San Agustin and Ryan Idanan from DepEd Catanduanes National High School.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Mr. Jimi Paolo Valeza, and my partner in writing this academic paper is Mr. Ryan Idanan. So our topic is Pain and Pleasure as the Final Cause of Action, an analysis on character education. We are still in the process of further studying this topic. However, here are the outcome of our paper for discussion. To begin with, according to Mark Anthony Liego, a Filipino author on teaching, wrote that values education as a part of the school curriculum is a process by which values, attitudes, and habits are formed as the learner interacts with this environment under the guidance of the teacher. This is a program to integrate and deepen the student understanding of himself, the values he needs to inculcate accordingly. Now, the goal of the Values Education Program is to provide and promote values education at all levels of the educational system for the development of the human person committed to the building of a just and humane society and an independent and democratic nation. Thus, it aims on developing a person committed to building a free, democratic, peaceful, and progressive nation. With the many years of developing and implementing the values or character education in the Philippines, let us further discuss the situation of the Philippine values education through the following statements. Here are the statements of the problem. Should values education be treated like the other academic subjects? Secondly, what are the possible reasons for the non-realization of its objectives? And third, how can the ethical concept of pain and pleasure aid in the proper understanding of ways to further inculcate the goals of Philippine values education? Values education involves different kinds of teaching and learning process. First, in terms of subject matter, values have direct and immediate relevance to the personal life of the learner. Thus, it must be a careful understanding of oneself and how the individual experiences of the student affect himself. Secondly, the process involves not just cognitive, but all the faculties of the learner. This involves an appeal to the heart and the total human person, not just the mind. And third, one learns values the way children learn many things from their parents. This means there is a process of identifying with which becomes the vehicle for the transmission of learning. Hence, the parents, the teachers, and other people's personal values play an important role in values learning. Let us understand our present situation. One of the objectives of values education is that a person must be committed to the progress of the nation as well as of the entire world community through global solidarity. However, Melissa Luz Lopez, a CNN reporter, wrote in her March 4, 2020 news report that nonprofit Transparency International placed the Philippines at 113th of 180 countries in battling graft and corruption, which scored 34, down 14 notches in 2019. Values education program must be taught in order that social beings to have a sense of responsibility for their community and environment. However, on January 21, 2022, Eunice Barbara C. Novio, a journalist, wrote that environmental laws and building codes that can withstand extreme situations are already in place but are useless due to corruption. One of the objectives also of values education is for the student to become productive persons who can contribute to the economic security and development of the family and the nation. However, many promote fake news which pushes propaganda, sways elections, distorts truth, and ruins lives. Lastly, values education should make a student manifest in his actual life an abiding faith in God as a reflection of his spiritual being. However, many people would exchange anger and hurt inflicting words to others through the social media platforms. Now, let us see the perspective of the pain and pleasure concept in relation to the values education program.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Ryan Idanan, and allow me to continue the discussion of Sir Jimi Paolo Valeza, my co-presenter in this paper. The paper claims that the falling short of values education program to meet its objectives is due to our misconception of the nature of values and misunderstanding of the human condition. First, we presume that values can be taught. This presumption is clearly manifested in the various character education programs being implemented in the country. But the question is, can values really be taught just like the other academic subjects, for instance, science and math? The answer is, we cannot teach values education just like the other academic subjects. First, values education has a different proof of learning. Values are not just abstract concepts that a person needs to know, explain, and demonstrate through paper and pen, tests, or assessments. Values are codes, norms to live by, and thus are best demonstrated through practice. In values education, knowing the definition of honesty, explaining its importance, and other mental or cognitive demonstrations is not yet proof of learning. Living an honest life is. Living out the values is the only proof that the student has learned. Second, values education teachers cannot expect objective results. Objective results mean that the students will perform according to what they have learned in class. In mathematics, for instance, learners who have learned that 5 plus 5 is equal to 10 will respond 10 when asked. Students who may not know the right answer may respond differently, but those who know will surely give the correct answer. The same, however, cannot be expected from values education students. A learner who have been taught that they have to be honest may still cheat, lie, propagate fake news, depending on the circumstances. Now let us discuss the nature of man. Traditionally, man is defined as a rational being. To be rational means that man has the ability to differentiate or make a distinction between right and wrong and make a sensible choice from the given alternatives. To be rational also means to be responsible of one's actions, always following the dictate of reason. This understanding of man as a rational being has led to the presumption that man will always do the right thing. It believes that in making an ethical choice, understanding that it is the right thing to do is enough for a man to be motivated to do it. From the words of Plato, knowledge is virtue because knowing the good will necessarily lead to doing the good. However, other thinkers claim that the standard of doing what is good is based on other considerations. Bentham and Mill, for example, believe that what motivates a person to act depends on pleasure and pain, and not on the cognitive recognition or understanding that such act is the rational thing to do. For example, one is motivated to tell the truth not because it is the right thing to do, but because of the amount of pleasure that he gets from telling the truth. Conversely, he may decide to propagate fake news instead of truth if doing the latter brings more pain than pleasure. This can be paralleled to the implementation of values education program in the Philippines. So far, the implementation of values education program cannot be said to be fully successful for the reasons that were mentioned by Sir Jimi. And as the program is still in the process of achieving its goals and objectives, which is to mold students towards building a free, democratic, peaceful, and progressive nation. But in order for the students to imbibe and live out these values, the values education program should ensure that doing so is more beneficial or pleasurable than not living out these values. This entails that values education program should go hand in hand with the different government institutions in ensuring that violations of these values are met with punishment and conformity with rewards. When there is certainty that non-performance of these values is punished, while living out or practicing these values are rewarded, this will ensure that individuals will be committed in achieving the goals and objectives of values education program in the country. Conclusion. Values education program should not be treated like the other academic subjects, like, for example, math and science. And values education program, to be successful, should be anchored on the ethical concepts of pain and pleasure. Further, values education program should be complemented by government institutions in ensuring that performance of these values are rewarded and non-performance are met with punishment. This will ensure that students will live out those values in the real world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Valeza and Mr. Idanan, for that wonderful presentation on pain and pleasure in line with values education and character formation. Our next paper presenter is from Pat's College of Aeronautics. She finished her Bachelor's of Arts in Philosophy, cum laude, in the University of Santo Tomas in 2018. Her research interests are mainly on the works of Friedrich Nietzsche, Alistair MacIntyre, and Buddhism. The title of the paper that she'll be presenting to us is Krishnamurti on Education. Dear participants, let us welcome Ms. Amabel R. Sumabat.
Okay, so good day to everyone. So I am going to be presenting today my paper with the title Krishnamurti on Education. So in this paper, I aim to explore Jiddu Krishnamurti's notion of education against the backdrop of the market-driven global culture and dwell on the concern that there may be a tendency for the cultivation of the inner aspect of the human person to be given little importance. So I seek to address the disparity between education as an investment of skills and the transformation of the heart. So for Krishnamurti, real education is not about simply getting a degree, getting employed, and earning money. It's more than that. This kind of education deprives the individual of being a complete human being, or what he calls as total human being, and also prevents us from genuinely living. So this work forwards the argument in three parts. First, I briefly course through the, the, the market-driven global culture and its impact on education. Next, I discuss Krishnamurti's notion of education, and then I attempt to evaluate the role of education in a profit-oriented society. So I explore Krishnamurti's idea of the scientific mind and religious spirit and discern how compassion, love, and peace may prevail and where the individual may flourish in a society that tends to treat the human being as a commodity or a tool for profitable economic exchange. So this article endeavors to be an alternative perspective about education, guided by the question, what is Krishnamurti's notion of education that could bring change into the mind and heart of an individual to be a holistic human person that flourishes in goodness both outwardly and inwardly? So I'd like to begin this presentation with this quotation from Krishnamurti. So it says, shouldn't you be educated not only in geography, history, mathematics, and all the rest of it, but also in this field where you have to discover for yourself how to live in this monstrous world? Isn't that part of education? begin guided by the question, what is Krishnamurti's notion of education that could bring change into the mind and heart of an individual to be a holistic human person that flourishes in goodness both outwardly and inwardly? I then attempt to explore Krishnamurti's notion or idea of education and highlight the importance of the cultivation of both inner and outer aspect of the individual, or a harmony between the scientific mind and what he calls a true religious spirit. So, Krishnamurti describes how an overemphasis on technological knowledge may give way to a human being who knows very little about compassion, kindness, and love. So it's like he likened it into like having a right arm highly developed, strong, vital, while the rest of the body withers, is weak, and feeble. Instead, for Krishnamurti, primarily, right education is not to help you find careers. So he's not saying, however, that careers or investment on skills are not important. It's just that he recognizes the necessity of balance between cultivation of both the outer and the inner aspect of the individual. Education should not just address our technological proficiency, but also the human person's inner progress. As UNESCO reminds us, education is above all an inner journey. In the same vein, Lourdes Custodio, in her book Building a Philosophy of Education for Our Times, describes our era today as a technological one, where we are already in an age of computers and robots. And for her, education refers to something profound in us and has to do with something internal. And for this reason, Custodio said that humanity or the totality of nature is doomed to catastrophe if the only concern is focused in the forces of science and technology. Also, in his article entitled Philosophy, Well-Being, and the Identity of Catholic Universities, Carino also describes more, and I quote, more and more students look at university education as a bridge to someplace else but not as a destination. School has ceased to be an exciting, engaging frontier and has become a glorified a glorified waiting lounge for that first job interview. A freshman comes to school and the first thing he dreams of is the day when he leaves it. So in other words, where the labor market, it seems, has taken over the classic humanistic goals of learning. I end quote. So the kind of virtue today we have centers on acquisitiveness. We have a way of life now that is dedicated to mainly, primarily, profit or material survival. Also, in a report published by Agbisit, Bolaños, Carino Cortez, Marela Bolaños, and Pada about teaching and doing philosophy in the Philippines, critique and intervention, states that in the market-driven global culture, the performance of one's humanity is reduced to the function of consumption. The logic of the market wants the world to believe that one becomes fully human when the person is an invested participant in the economic exchange. End quote. So everything becomes a commodity nowadays, even us. It seems that there's a tendency for us to be reduced as mere consumers. But for Krishnamurti, I quote, states that I am a human being. I've got extraordinary capacities. I must exercise all those capacities, otherwise, I am not a human being. I am I become merely a technician. End quote. So, one must not lead a purely mechanical or technological life. For Krishnamurti, education does not only mean excelling, getting high grades in mathematics or geography or the sciences. There are two states of mind that are of value for Krishnamurti. which is the true religious spirit and the true scientific mind. A factual mind free from prejudice, and a mind who sees the falsities of tenets, beliefs, and tradition. Again, to clarify, Krishnamurti is not really advocating for the sole focus of inward cultivation of the human person. Rather, both inner and outer aspect of the individual should be balanced if the individual were to be a total and complete human being. So he also states, and I quote, if we concentrate very much on examinations, on technological information, on making the child clever, proficient in acquiring knowledge, while we neglect the other side, then the child will grow up into a one-sided human being. When we talk about a total human being, we mean not only human being with inward understanding, with the capacity to explore, to examine his inward being, his inward state, and the capacity of going beyond it, but also someone who is good in what he does outwardly. The two must go together. That is the real issue in education. To see that when the child leaves the school, he is well established in goodness, both outwardly and inwardly. End quote. So, in Krishnamurti's outlook or perspective, education should take into account a total understanding of the human being and not emphasize only one fragment of our life, such as technology, for instance, or skill necessary for earning a living. Instead, it's important for education to also address the inner aspect or the emotional dimension of human existence, like affection, compassion, anger, guilt, fear that course through the lives of all human beings. And in addition to the issues that everyone faces and always has faced, but usually without help, within the secret and lonely reaches of one's private life. After all, what good is it to be able to write outstanding essays, publishable papers, or invent something innovative if your life is neglected and your relationship with other fellow human beings are in a state of downward spiral anyway? So, in other words, for Krishnamurti, education helps us understand also and experience life as a whole, not just a fragment or an aspect of it. Now, Krishnamurti also asks, the cultivation of technique has produced scientists, mathematicians, bridge builders, space conquerors, but do they understand the total process of life? Indeed, technological progress does indeed solve certain kinds of problems, but it does not deal with the process of life as a whole. So Krishnamurti also asserts that, and I quote, the greatest need and the most pressing problem for every individual is to have an increasing integrated comprehension of life, which will enable him to meet its increasing or ever increasing complexities. There is nothing wrong with honing one's technological knowledge and proficiency. The problem, however, lies when there is too much emphasis on it that one neglects the other parts of life, like love, understanding, kindliness, generosity, affection, and or among others. Because when people are merely educated outwardly, people would have the tendency to lose their ways and become destructive, callous human beings. Technological knowledge, according to Krishnamurti, however necessary, will in no way resolve our inner psychological pressures and conflict. And it is because we have acquired technical knowledge without understanding the total processes of life that technology has become a means of destroying ourselves. And so the man who knows how to split the atom but has no love in his heart becomes a monster. So what good are your skills force if you don't know how to apply it in a very humanly way, right? So Krishnamurti acknowledges that some form of technical training is necessary. Again, but what happens next when one has become an engineer or a physician or an accountant? He asks, are the practices of these professions the fulfillment of life? Isn't it part of your education also to understand yourself? Without self-understanding, or end quote, without self-understanding, these occupations may lead to frustration. Technique without understanding leads to callousness or indifference. So, for Krishnamurti, and I quote, technological progress is fantastic, but it has only increased our powers of destroying one another. There is starvation and misery in every land. We are not peaceful and happy people. End quote. Again, Krishnamurti is not totally against technological knowledge. It's just that this outwardly part or aspect of life being strongly underscored is unfulfilling and dangerous to the individual and society at large, especially if not complemented with cultivation of the inner aspect. So the politician, the electronics expert become marvelous human machines but lead very narrow lives. They are sorrowful people having no depth in them. They have everything: money, position, and power. But if these are removed, extreme superficiality and hollowness of the heart would surface. And so, the right kind of education, then, encourages not just the learning of a technique, but also should help us experience the integrated or the whole process of life. For it is through this experience that will put technique and efficiency in the right place. Moreover, it should cultivate one's whole being, which gives one mind and heart a depth. Because merely the cultivation of technique and technological knowledge is not enough, for these do not actually fulfill the individual's life, and it's just living in a fragmented way with a myopic vision of life. For this reason, it is one of the roles of education to make us realize that earning money is just one aspect of the vastness of life, or cultivating, investing in investment on skills is just one aspect of the total process of life. Now, in this quotation, Krishnamurti asks, now what is the significance of life? What are we living and struggling for? If we are being educated merely to achieve distinction, to get a better job, to be more efficient, to have wider domination over others, then our lives will be shallow and empty. And if we are being educated only to be scientists, to be scholars wedded to books, or specialists addicted to knowledge, then we shall be contributing to the destruction and the misery of the world. Because as long as education is concerned with specializing or focusing on the outer aspect, the inner movement with its immense depth will inevitably for the few, and that, for Krishnamurti, there lies great sorrow. Because it is through the cultivation, again, of both the inner and outer aspect of the human person can one be a total or a complete human being, one who genuinely lives, not just a very narrow or myopic life, but actually living. And so, education should also help us understand life as a whole. It's not just about solving mathematical equations or problems, but also learn how to deal with our inner conflicts, our inner pressures, life's problems, its miseries such as death, love, relationship, conflict, anger, and the whole rest of it. for this is the whole structure of human existence. A person may have a PhD after his name, or he may become an esteemed businessman with houses and cars, but if he has no love, no affection, no kindliness, no consideration for Krishnamurti, he is worse than an animal. And this is what education should bring about. It's the change of the inner man. Now, right education should lead us to the reminder, awareness, and understanding that its end goal is to help students be intelligent for the comprehension of the whole course of life, and not just in school, not just within the four walls of the classroom, but the comprehension of the whole course of life. There must be a combination of the mind and the heart in action. As Krishnamurti would say, I quote, education in the true sense is helping the individual to be mature and free, to flower greatly in love and goodness. End quote. So one who lives without love lives an empty life. Without love, you are a dead human being. Hence, only love, and I quote, only love can bring about the understanding of another, but unfortunately, we're so busy with the occupations of the mind that we have little time for the promptings of the heart. End quote. Now, in sum, Krishnamurti's notion of education entails addressing also the inner aspect of the human being. For him, this inner aspect remains important just as the cultivation of techniques or technological knowledge, and the integration of the two teaches the student to be intelligent not just in school but also in life. For it is intelligence that guides one on how to live in this world. And it is through a sound mind and a sound heart that completes the totality of being human. And while it is true that the future favors those who are conversant with the digitalized world that we live in, the finest and happiest people are those who can merge both technological wit and humanity. So the greatest need and most pressing problem for every individual is to have an integrated comprehension of life which will enable us to meet its ever increasing complexities. And with that, I end my presentation and thank you everyone for bearing with me and for listening. Thank
Our
you.
next paper presenter is a faculty member at St. Louis College, City of San Fernando, La Union. He finished his AB Philosophy at San Pablo Seminary, Baguio City in 2016. And in 2020, he graduated his MA in Education from the same institution where he is currently working. He went on his initial studies in the PhD in Philosophy at St. Louis University in the same year. At present, he teaches ethics and Christian faith education at the undergraduate level. He also serves as a part-time professor in the School of Advanced Studies at the same institution, where he teaches advanced philosophy of education, professional ethics, and philosophy of missionary identity. His research interests include philosophy of education, hermeneutics, religion, and environmental ethics. The title of his paper that he'll be presenting to us is no other than The Integral Ecology as a Transformative Pedagogy for Facilitating a Meaningful Ecological Education. Dear participants, let us welcome Mr. Niño Randy C. Flores from the University from St. Louis College.
Slide. This paper consists of 4 parts. The first part is the introduction, where I will be presenting the gist of the background of the study. The second part deals with the integral education as an act of creative hope which is an analysis of Pope Francis's educational standpoint. The third part deals with education as a path of liberation and transformation, which is a reflection on Paulo Freire's educational perspective. Then the paper concludes with a brief explication of how integral ecology as a transformative pedagogy facilitates an ecological education among students and teachers. This explication results from the exploration of the affinity and the possible fusion of horizons between the educational philosophies of Pope Francis and Paulo Freire. Next slide, please. Now, the pandemic crisis has amplified the need for pedagogical renewal. This necessitates an integrated approach to education that is, the students, as a human subject, do not only need to learn the necessary skills and knowledge to succeed and cope with the demands of times. They also need to figure out how to be capable. Hence, this integrated approach calls the educators to walk the extra mile by striving to have an integral outlook on the teaching-learning process. The integrated approach being referred to is akin to how Pope Francis describes the concept of integral ecology. According to the Pope, it is an invitation to form a holistic and unified vision of life that integrates the environmental, cultural, socio-economic, as well as the spiritual dimension. There is, in other words, this is the conviction that all of these things are interconnected. Because everything is interconnected, there is the task to search for an integrated outlook, an integrated and practical understanding of progress, which does not limit it in terms of the techno-economic and financial aspects, but also pay crucial attention to socio-cultural, ethical, spiritual, and human dimensions. To outline the foundation of integral ecological praxis, ethical insight must be drawn out of dialogue to provide the critical substance needed for an integral development of understanding of the socio-environmental issue leading towards what the Pope called ecological conversion. To bring this about, the facilitation of ecological education among people is necessary. After all, ecological education is about the transformation of behavior and mindset towards a holistic way of thinking, feeling, and doing. In the classroom level, transformative pedagogy suits the process of facilitating an ecological learning among students as it seeks to empower them to critically examine their perspectival horizon with the goal of developing critical thinking, creating spaces for self-reflection, and appreciation for diversity. Thus, this paper attempts to tackle this main problem. How can integral ecology be employed as a transformative pedagogy to facilitate a meaningful ecological education among students? Next slide, please. We thus proceed to the second part of this presentation. Let us begin with the assertion that education is essentially integral, and thus it is an act of creative hope. Next slide, please. In his video message to the meeting Global Compact on Education, Together to Look Beyond, Pope Francis made it clear that part of the educational commitment is, and I quote, to be committed to finding new ways of understanding the economy, politics, growth, and progress that can truly stand at the service of the human person and the entire human family within the context of an integral ecology. In other words, education is the process of finding a transformative paradigm where new ways of self-expression and forms of societal participation become possible for everyone. More than a mere transmission of concepts and facts, education is a form of capacity building where both the educator and those being educated are in constant discernment and striving for what is possible. Hence, educators, families, and communities are entrusted with the mission of educating persons integrally, head, hands, and heart. To inculcate an integral education among students is to let them and provide them the essential opportunity to think what they feel and do, to feel what they think and do, and to do what they feel and think. That is, my friends, the central point of the Pope's educational philosophy. This embodies what he identified as the four essential principles of an ecological education, namely, to know oneself, to know one's brothers and sisters, to know creation, and above all, to know the transcendent. Next slide, please. Now, when we speak of integral education, we mean it to be the total and seamless integration of human thinking, feeling, and doing. In essence, it is pagpapakatao. Hence, education is a humanizing process which equips men and women not only with the knowledge to succeed in life, but also with the tools of discernment to elevate human experience into the level of thought and dialogue. The ultimate outcome of education is the transformation of one's mindset. Such is the foundation of the transformation of society, and without it, no integrated way of doing and looking at the reality is possible. Hence, this is precisely why Pope Francis insists that education is always an act of creative hope. It is creative because to teach and to learn within the educative process is to bind ourselves into what is possible without losing our connection with the achievements and legacy of the past. It is hope because educating is an attempt to make real and concrete, or in other words, it is our attempt to incarnate our vision of the future. Ecological education is not about understanding and responding to the inherent education is about understanding and responding to the inherent interconnectedness of the environmental, socio-economic, cultural, and human ecologies. Its objective is not only the change of habit in an individual, nor of raising an awareness of facts, but also the transformation of one's lifestyle. This transformation is characterized by a novel self-awareness capable of offering guidance and direction. Next slide, please. Now, for the third part of of my presentation, for integral ecological education to be efficiently passed on to the students, an effective pedagogy is necessary. Pedagogy is more than figuring out which method or practices of teaching works best for the students. Rather, it is a way of incarnating an academic study or theory concretely in relevant practice. Moreover, it is a teacher's way of connecting with the students to inspire them to reflect critically, so to be able to live out and share the fruits of their reflection with others. It is for this reason that transformative pedagogy from the perspective of Paolo Freire is discerned to be the tool to translate the doctrine or the concept of integral ecology from a mere concept to a practical tool of the teaching learning process. Next slide, please. Previously, we have mentioned that education is more than a mere transmission of concepts. Freire calls that as the banking model, in which no growth occurs when the teacher feeds knowledge to the students, while the latter are passive and treated as a mere docile audiences. The transformative pedagogy as something that creates developmental spaces for self-reflection and critical thinking encourages teachers to predispose themselves as learners rather than as experts in their field, and to treat their learners as co-investigators encouraged to enter in an active dialogue with them. Freire regards education as essentially dialogic. It is based on a healthy conversation between the teacher and student, for it is through dialogue that learners learn. It is through dialogue that learners learn more by articulating their insights from their impressions, experiences, and background. The challenge for the educators, therefore, is on how to accompany the students in their process of learning Hence, the calling is to generate mutual learning. From a critical pedagogical perspective, education is a practice of freedom which integrates people into the reality of the world vis-a-vis their experiences and relationship with it. The starting point of learning is in the very experiences and events that shape the course of reality. The development of critical thinking is to awaken the critical perception of the world and its reality where they find themselves immersed in it. Such critical perception propels the recognition of that reality as being in the process of transformation. Therefore, education is the path towards liberation and transformation. Next slide, please. Appropriating Freire's insight into the goal of ecological education, it could be said that its goal is to humanize people, to empower them in realizing their historical vocation towards pagpapakatao through solidarity and fellowship. The transformation engendered by an ecological education calls people to rise above themselves, to transcend their social conditioning, and to go out of themselves towards the other. In other words, we are called to become persons for others, a tagapangalaga, a tagapagpahalaga, or in Ilocos language, mangpatag and mangipatag. A profound change in lifestyle is always marked by metanoia. Theologically, it means change of heart. But in educational context, it means recalibrating one's disposition in relationship with oneself, others, and the environment. Next slide. Now, for our conclusion. The creative convergence between these two educational philosophies demonstrates education as a liberating and humanizing process which empowers people to create new paradigms capable of responding to the present challenges and promoting human flourishing and freedom. Both the thoughts of Pope Francis and Paolo Freire point out that education ought to be transformative. The teaching-learning process, therefore, should become an avenue to lead both the teacher and the student towards mutual learning. They only differ in terms of focus. On one hand, Pope Francis puts emphasis on the personal aspect of education because for him, it is a matter of love and responsibility involving the formation of persons who can make radical decisions that can transform their way of life and enhance their moral dispositions. On the other hand, Paolo Freire highlights its societal aspect because he is convinced that education is an instrument which sharpens the critical perception of the people to recognize reality not as a static but a dynamic process of transformation. From this exploration of the affinity, convergence, and difference between these two educational philosophies, the following themes are therefore called out: perspectival, dialogical, and practical. In turn, these terms fittingly characterize integral ecology as a transformative pedagogy in facilitating ecological education among students. The interrelation of these themes in the order presented or illustrated in the spiral diagram signify their progressive pedagogical character when it is practiced in the classroom. So, to engender a transformative classroom encounter, it matters that the preliminary step be oriented towards taking a review and reflection on human experience in connection with a particular topic or issue to substantiate the discussion from the viewpoint of the students. That is the perspectival aspect. After reflecting, the role of the teacher as facilitator of dialogue comes in. An active engagement in the form of dialogical sharing can only happen when there is critical questioning and dialogue among the teacher and students and among the students themselves. That is the dialogical aspect. Finally, the process of dialogue may cause clashes or conflicts of understanding. Nonetheless, it presents the opportunity to sit down together and to find solutions to socio-environmental issues relating to their immediate experience. These solutions are envisioned to be the concrete application of their learning as may be reflected later on in their output or performance tasks. That is the practical aspect. To drive the essential point, to capture the gist of this paper, I think that the whole point of integral ecology as a transformative pedagogical practice is to impart among students that to be human is to strive to see and grasp the whole of reality as well as the interconnection of its aspects. I think that responding to the vocation of pagpapakatao involves the struggle to live out the fruits of our attempt, to know ourselves, to know our brothers and sisters, to know creation, and to know the transcendent. Thank you so much for your time and listening.